There's a moment in every father's life when he realizes his child doesn't see him anymore. Not really. They see a shadow, a paycheck, a burden disguised as a man. And there's another moment, the one where you decide to stop being invisible. Tonight I want to tell you about the night my son auctioned me off in front of 300 people. For $1, maybe $2. He was laughing. The whole room was laughing. But here's what nobody knew. I was already 10 steps ahead. If you've ever been underestimated by someone you love, if you've ever had to bite your tongue while watching someone you raised throw you away for applause, then you need to watch this to the end. Because this isn't just a story about humiliation. This is a story about power, and about what happens when the quiet ones finally stop being quiet. Let me take you back to where it all began. My name is David, I'm 58 years old, and by almost every measure I am exactly as boring as my son made me sound. I wake up at 5:47 a.m. every single morning. Not 5:45, not 6, 5:47. I know this makes me sound like a human spreadsheet, but there's something about that specific time. The way the light comes through the kitchen window, the quiet before the city wakes up. It's mine. I work in commercial real estate, have done for 32 years. I'm not a CEO. I'm not the guy with the corner office who gets quoted in Forbes. I'm the guy who knows the corner office. I know the contracts. I know the land. I know which properties are about to quadruple in value 3 years before anyone else figures it out. I live in the same house I bought in 1998. 3-bedroom colonial in New Jersey. The carpet is from 2003. The furniture smells like old coffee and old books. My friends sometimes joke that my living room looks like a Time magazine office from 1994. They're not wrong. But here's what they don't understand. Every single decision I made, every boring decision, was deliberate. The house isn't worth $3 million because it's special. It's worth $3 million because I understood the market. The carpet doesn't stay from 1998 because I can't afford new ones. It stays because I choose not to waste money on things that don't matter. I drive a 2009 Honda Accord, silver, 127,000 miles. People pity me when they see it. They assume I can't do better. What they don't know is that I could drive anything. But Accord owners have lower insurance premiums. They get better mileage. They hold their value. And more importantly, nobody remembers them. Nobody notices the silver Accord. That's the whole point. My son, Marcus, he never understood this about me. He saw the boring exterior and thought that's all there was. A simple man, a simple life, a simple dad who didn't deserve to sit at the cool table anymore. But I understood something he didn't yet. Invisibility is power, and I'd been collecting power for 30 years. Marcus turned 32 last year. He's beautiful in the way young, successful men are beautiful. He knows exactly what he looks like, and he's mastered the art of using it. Dark hair, sharp jawline, always wearing clothes that cost more than my monthly car payment. He works in marketing for a tech startup in Manhattan. The kind of place where everyone calls each other by their first name and talks about disrupting industries like their profits. He's ambitious. That's the word people use. What they mean is ruthless. What they mean is he'll walk over you if you're standing in the way of something shinier. We had a good relationship, I think. Or at least, we had a relationship. He'd call me on Sundays, not every Sunday. Maybe 2 out of 4. We'd talk about his work, his life, his girlfriend, now fiancée, named Victoria. Victoria. God, where do I even start with Victoria? She's brilliant, in a certain kind of way. Model level beautiful, not naturally, but she's done whatever needed to be done to look that way. She has the kind of voice that makes you feel stupid just listening to her. High, commanding, with a slight British accent that she slips in and out of depending on the company. When she laughs, everyone else stops what they're doing and waits to hear what she might say next. Marcus met her at a rooftop party in Tribeca 3 years ago. Within 6 months, he'd moved into her apartment, a place in Brooklyn that looked like a luxury hotel designed for people with no actual hobbies. Everything was white. Everything. White furniture, white walls, white art on the walls that I'm pretty sure wasn't actually art. Just blank white canvases with price tags starting at 15 grand. When I visited once, maybe 2 years ago now, Victoria greeted me at the door, and I swear she didn't blink the entire time I was there. Just stared, like she was waiting for me to steal something. The first time she called me sweet, I knew we were in trouble. "How sweet that you still drive yourself," she said, watching me parallel park their Range Rover in some underground garage. "How sweet that you brought wine from a supermarket," she said, when I showed up to dinner with a Pinot Noir that cost $30. "How sweet that you remember all these little stories from your work," she said, while I was trying to explain something about a property development deal to Marcus, watching his eyes glaze over as he checked his phone for the 7th time in 10 minutes. But the really weird part was how Marcus changed around her. It was gradual, so gradual that I didn't notice it at first. But over 3 years, the man I raised, the boy who used to call me Dad in that unself-conscious way kids do, disappeared. He became a supporting character in her story. He started dressing like she wanted. He moved where she wanted. He made friends with the people she wanted around them. And most importantly, he started looking at people the way she did, like he was constantly assessing their value, their usefulness, their worth, including me. Our Sunday calls became less frequent. When we did talk, he'd answer in that tired, patient voice you use with people you're obligated to care for. He stopped asking about my life. He started talking only about theirs. The engagement, party, the wedding planning, the apartment they were buying in Tribeca, not the one they had now, but a bigger one, a better one that faced the right way. One time, about 8 months ago, he asked me for a loan, $25,000 for some wedding expense he couldn't quite explain. I almost gave it to him. My hand was actually on my checkbook, but something made me stop. Some small voice said, "He doesn't want your help. He wants your money. And once you give it, he'll never have to respect you again." So I told him no. I'll never forget the silence on the other end of the phone. It was like he'd never heard that word from me before. And the way he recovered, that fake laugh, that quick, "Okay, never mind, we'll figure something out," told me everything I needed to know about what he actually thought of me. I was useful when I could be used, invisible when I wasn't needed, and absolutely disposable once I stopped being convenient. The invitation arrived in December. Not by email, not by text. An actual physical invitation, printed on cardstock so expensive it probably had its own trust fund. Gold lettering, cream-colored envelope. Inside, a handwritten note from Victoria. "Dear David, we would be honored if you would join us for our Winter Gala fundraiser, an evening celebrating architecture, innovation, and community. Formal attire. 7 p.m., the Peninsula Hotel. With warmth, Victoria." With warmth. That was the tell. Right there. Victoria doesn't do warmth. She does manipulation. That note was designed to make me feel special, to make me feel included. To make me think that maybe, just maybe, my son's fiancée had finally accepted me as part of the family. It was a trap. I just didn't know how elaborate the trap was yet. I called Marcus to confirm. "Hey buddy, got your fancy invitation." "Dad." "Yeah, Mom told me she was sending those out. You're coming, right? It's going to be amazing. 300 people, all the biggest names in architecture, design, tech, everything. It's going to be really, I don't know, cultural." Cultural, that's what he said. Like my attendance might finally add some sophistication to my resume. "Sure," I said. "I'll be there. What should I wear?" "Oh, the invitation says formal. So, like a tuxedo or something. You have a tuxedo, right?" I had a tuxedo. I bought it in 1996 for my brother's wedding. I'd worn it maybe 4 times since. It was a good tuxedo, Tom Ford actually, though I'd never told anyone. I bought it because it was well made, not because of the label. "Yeah, I have one," I said. Cool. So, are you bringing a +1, like a date or something?" There was something in that question, something almost hopeful, like he wanted me to have a date. Like my presence alone at this event was somehow embarrassing. But if I brought someone else, at least I wouldn't be alone. At least I'd have something to explain. "No," I said, "just me." "Oh, okay, well, yeah. So, you'll be there?" I said, "I'll be there. Right, yeah, cool. Thanks, Dad, really. Victoria's going to be so happy you're coming." After I hung up, I sat in my living room for about 20 minutes, not doing anything, just thinking. There was something wrong about this invitation, something off. It wasn't the kind of thing Victoria would do out of kindness. Victoria didn't have kindness. She had agendas. She had goals. She had a carefully curated vision of the world that only included people who could somehow improve her position in it. So why invite me? I pulled out my laptop and started doing what I do, what I've been doing for 30 years. I knew things. Not because I was smart, though I am, but because I paid attention to details that other people ignored. The Peninsula. Hotel. I started researching the gala. It didn't take long to find the event description. Winter Gala, a celebration of innovative design, presented by Marcus Sterling, emerging leader in architectural marketing and design philosophy. Marcus Sterling. That was his new professional name. He'd started using it about 6 months ago. He never told me. His mother, my ex-wife, called me from Florida and mentioned it almost in passing. Did you know Marcus is going by Sterling now? Sterling is Victoria's last name, I think. Or her mother's maiden name or something. Anyway, it's very pretentious. But that's your son for you. So this gala wasn't just an event. This was Marcus's event. This was him announcing himself to the world as someone new, someone important, someone worth knowing. And he wanted me there. But he didn't want me there as his father. He wanted me there as... what? A prop? A cautionary tale? The boring dad in the outdated tuxedo who proved just how far he'd come? I knew, right then, that this night was going to be significant. I just didn't know how significant. Not yet. I spent the next 3 weeks researching property deals connected to the gala's sponsors, financial records I could find, social media posts from Victoria's friends, magazine profiles of the innovative young leaders who would be in attendance, and I found things. Small things, inconsistencies. A real estate deal that Victoria claimed to have brokered that didn't actually match the public record. A client she mentioned having that didn't exist. An investment she bragged about that she couldn't possibly have made with the money she actually had access to. Victoria was lying about something. I couldn't figure out what yet, but she was definitely lying, and whatever it was, Marcus was in it with her. So I made a call. To someone I hadn't talked to in about 15 years. You'll understand why in just a moment. My name is David, but I haven't always been David. There's another part of this story I need to tell you, not because it's pleasant, but because without it, nothing that comes next will make sense. When I was younger, much younger before Marcus was born, before I even met his mother. I worked in a different kind of field. Not real estate, not exactly. I was an investigator, not law enforcement, not private sector, not officially anyway. I did contract work for firms that dealt with fraud, embezzlement, sophisticated financial crimes. I was good at it, very good. I had an eye for patterns, for the way things don't quite add up, for the tiny lies that somehow always bubble to the surface if you know how to look. I did that work for about 8 years, made excellent money. Too much money, actually. The kind of money that makes you paranoid, the kind of money that makes you wonder who you're becoming. And then, one case changed everything. It was a routine corporate fraud situation. Embezzlement, some falsified documents, the usual story. But the person doing the embezzling, she was someone I knew, someone I cared about. And when the evidence came together, when I realized what she'd done, I had to choose between the job and the person. I chose wrong. I turned over the evidence. The case went to trial, she went to prison, and I spent the next 10 years trying to forget that I was the reason. So I left that world. I went back to school, got my license in real estate, bought the boring house, got the boring job, became the boring dad. I was trying to be someone who didn't destroy people's lives anymore, someone who could just exist without leaving collateral damage everywhere. And for the most part, it worked. But the skills never leave you. The eye for patterns never stops working. The ability to read people, to see underneath what they're showing you, it's like learning to drive. You don't forget. You just stop thinking about it. So when I suspected Victoria of lying, I called someone from my old life, someone who'd been in the investigation business the way I had. His name was Frank. He was older now, probably 65, but he still did work, mostly corporate security, occasionally bigger things. We grabbed coffee, and I told him what I'd noticed. Not everything, just enough. "Can you find out what she's lying about?" I asked. He smiled like I'd just asked him to do something fun. "Give me 2 weeks," he said, and he delivered in 9 days. The story was complex. The kind of complex that takes real expertise to unravel. Here's what Frank found. Victoria wasn't who she said she was. Well, she was. She had a real name, a real background. But what she'd been building, this whole persona of being this successful, sophisticated designer and entrepreneur, it was built on stolen ideas. Not metaphorically, actually stolen. She'd been hired by a small architecture firm 15 years ago, had learned their processes, stolen their client list, and then started her own firm claiming all the designs as her own work. Most of her accomplishments belonged to other people. And she was good at covering her tracks, but not perfect. Frank found emails, dated design files, testimony from former colleagues she'd threatened into silence. But here's where it got interesting, and here's where my son came in. The gala, the Winter Gala, a celebration of innovative design, the event that Marcus was organizing and hosting. It was going to be used as a platform to launch something bigger, a non-profit foundation, the Sterling Foundation for Architectural Innovation, founded by Marcus and Victoria, funded by a group of wealthy investors who believed Victoria's story about being this brilliant, groundbreaking designer. The plan was to use the foundation to legitimize everything she'd done, to create this narrative where all her work was research that was now going to benefit the world, and to funnel investor money through it. It was sophisticated, it was smart, and it was completely fraudulent. And Marcus knew, or at least Frank thought he did. "The thing is," Frank said, sitting across from me in a coffee shop in Jersey City, "I can't prove he knows. Could be he's just in love with her and doesn't ask questions. But the documents are there. His signature, his official statement about the foundation's mission. He's either involved or he's complicit." I sat with that for a long time. My son, the boy who called me to brag about his new life, the man who couldn't be bothered to visit more than twice a year, the guy who'd auctioned off his past so completely that you'd think I was some stranger he'd met at a bus stop. He was building something on lies, and lies I knew from long experience always collapse. They have to. The weight gets too heavy. "What do you want to do?" Frank asked. I didn't answer right away. "Let me go to the gala," I said finally. "Let me see it for myself, and then we'll figure out what happens next." The night of the gala, I put on the Tom Ford tuxedo. It fit perfectly, better actually than it had in 1996. I'm in better shape now than I was then. All those boring 5:47 a.m. mornings, all those 30-minute runs, all that careful eating. It's not about vanity. It's about maintaining control, about not letting anything slip. The tuxedo was midnight blue, not black. People don't realize the difference unless they know to look. And I looked perfect, which is to say, I looked invisible. I looked like 1,000 other men in tuxedos. I looked like I belonged. I drove the Silver Accord to Manhattan, parked it in a lot 6 blocks away from the peninsula. The valet situation would have drawn attention. I walked to the hotel, arrived at exactly 7:15 p.m. Early enough to not be late, late enough that people were already arriving, but the crowd wasn't overwhelming yet. The lobby was beautiful in that expensive, soulless way, everything beautiful. As I checked my coat, took a drink of Prosecco from a passing waiter, and moved toward the ballroom. That's when I saw him. Marcus. He was standing near the entrance, greeting people, laughing that laugh he does now, the one where he tilts his head and shows all his teeth. He was wearing a black Tom Ford tuxedo, the real designer version, probably cost $2,000. His hair was slicked back. He looked powerful. He looked like Victoria. When he saw me, there was this tiny moment, maybe a quarter second, where he didn't recognize me. His brain had to work to place me. Who is this older man in a tuxedo? Does he matter? Then the recognition landed. "Dad," he said, and he wrapped me in a hug. A real hug, or at least the theater of a real hug. The kind where he gripped my shoulder and made a show of it for everyone around us. "You came. You look great. You're like really pulling off the tuxedo thing." "Thanks, Marcus. You look good too, right? Victoria found this place in London that does custom tailoring. It's insane." He paused, and I watched his eyes scan the room. "Everyone's going to be so impressed you're here. My dad, right? The real estate guy?" "The real estate guy. That's how he introduced me. Not by name, not as his father, as my job, as my function." "I'm going to circulate a little," I said. "You're clearly busy." Yeah. But stick around, okay? We're doing this really cool live auction later. It's going to be hilarious." He patted my shoulder and turned back to greeting other guests. I moved into the ballroom. It was one of those spaces designed to look important. High ceilings, chandeliers, the kind of crowd that looks like a magazine. Then everyone beautiful, everyone wearing something expensive, everyone performing, being impressed with each other. There were about 200 people there already, more arriving every few minutes. I recognized a few faces from my research. Some minor celebrities, a couple of tech billionaires, several architects and designers who, according to the bios Frank had pulled, had all had their ideas stolen by Victoria at some point. They didn't know it, of course. But I did. I spent the next hour circulating, talking to nobody, looking at everything. There was a display set up about the Sterling Foundation, glossy pamphlets with Victoria and Marcus's faces on them. A projected video showing clips of Victoria's greatest designs, all of which were actually designed by people who no longer worked in the industry or who'd been bought off to stay quiet. It was brazen, almost insultingly brazen. Around 8:45, people started moving toward the dining room. There was assigned seating. I checked the card at my place. Table 7, next to a woman I didn't know and directly across from Victoria, and next to her, Marcus. Of course. I sat down. The woman next to me introduced herself as Jennifer. She was a publisher. Victoria had apparently designed a book of her architectural philosophy. Jennifer was very excited about it, couldn't stop talking about how visionary Victoria was. I just nodded and ate my salad. Dinner was served. Salmon for most people, vegetarian. Pasta for Victoria, naturally. We made small talk, the usual things. How I knew Marcus, how long I'd been in real estate, whether I went to these kinds of events often. And the whole time, I was watching Victoria. She was performing. That was the word that kept coming to mind. Everything about her was a performance. The way she tilted her head when she listened to people. The way she touched Marcus's arm when she wanted to emphasize a point. The way she sipped her wine. Never more than a tiny amount, just enough to keep the glass visible. The appearance of sophistication without the reality of actual enjoyment. She was, in many ways, very impressive. She'd built an entire identity on quicksand, and she was keeping it aloft through pure force of will. "David," she said, about halfway through the main course. She'd never called me David before. It was always David, how quaint. But tonight she said it like we were equals, like she was finally acknowledging me. "I wanted to thank you for coming. It means so much to Marcus that his family is here to support his vision." His vision. "I'm happy to be here," I said. "You know, Marcus tells me you've had quite a career." "In real estate. That's impressive." "It's steady work," I said. "But not flashy," she said. It wasn't a question. Not the kind of thing that shows up in magazines. "No," I said. "It doesn't." "I wonder what that's like," she said. She was looking at me now with that unblinking stare. "Spending your whole life making money that nobody notices. Building things that nobody cares about. I mean," she smiled. "No offense, but doesn't that get exhausting? Don't you ever want people to know who you are?" This was a test. I understood that immediately. She was testing me, seeing how I'd react to being put down in front of my son. "Victoria," I said, and I kept my voice very calm, very level. "There's a reason I've been successful for 32 years. It's because I don't need people to notice me. I need to understand things that other people miss. That makes me valuable." She held my gaze for a moment, and for the first time, I saw something in her face that looked almost like concern. Then she smiled, and it was gone. That's very philosophical, she said. Marcus, your father is more interesting than I gave him credit for. Yeah, Marcus said in a voice that suggested he'd never actually considered it. He's pretty cool. They went back to their conversation. I went back to my salmon. But the evening was shifting. I could feel it. Something was about to happen. Some revelation, some moment where everything changed, and I was ready. Around 9:30, the dessert course was cleared and an auctioneer took the stage. A real one, professional, the kind you hire for charity events. He made some jokes about the generosity of donors, about the importance of supporting innovation in architecture. And now, he said, we have some very special items up for auction. Tonight, items that were generously donated by friends and supporters of the Sterling Foundation. Starting bid, $500. The first item was a week-long trip to Tuscany, donated by a luxury travel company. It went for $3,500. The second was a custom architectural consultation with Victoria Sterling herself. Starting bid, $1,000. That went for $18,000. I watched Marcus's face as that number came up. He looked pleased, proud, like he'd really accomplished something, like he didn't realize what was happening. Then the auctioneer picked up another envelope. He paused. He looked like he was about to laugh. This one, he said, is a bit different. This was donated by Marcus Sterling himself, as a personal item. Very special. He opened the envelope and read what was inside. An evening with David Chen, he said. Marcus's father. Includes a professional dinner consultation, life advice, and... He paused, checking the paper. And one complete remorseful apology for being boring for the past 30 years. The room erupted. Not just laughter. The kind of uncontrollable laughter that comes from genuine shock, from recognizing something so cruel that it loops back around into entertainment. People were actually crying. People were recording it on their phones. I looked at Marcus. He was laughing too, laughing hard, like he'd planned this joke, like it was the funniest thing he'd ever done. Starting bid, the auctioneer said, reading the room. $5. $1, someone shouted. $1 is opening, the auctioneer confirmed. Do we have any interested bidders for a professional dinner consultation with David Chen, the boring real estate guy? Silence. Complete silence. Even the people who'd been laughing seemed to realize they'd gone too far. And in that silence, I felt something shift inside me. Not anger. I was prepared for anger. I'd already processed the anger. It was something colder than that, something more methodical. This wasn't just cruelty, this was exposure. Marcus had just announced to 300 people, announced on a public record, in an actual auction, that he thought I was worthless. That I was a joke. That the price of my company, my time, my worth as a human being, was lower than anyone in this room could imagine. The auctioneer was starting to look uncomfortable. Anyone? $1 for David Chen? And that's when the door to the ballroom opened. A man walked in. I recognized him immediately. It was Frank. He was in a tuxedo, which I'd told him to wear. He walked directly to the center of the room, to the auctioneer, and he said very calmly, I'll bid $1 million. The room went completely silent. I'm sorry? The auctioneer said. $1 million, Frank repeated. For an evening? With David Chen. Sir, I'm not sure you understand. This is a joke item. I understand perfectly, Frank said. He pulled out his phone and showed the auctioneer something. I'm prepared to wire the funds immediately. Do you accept? The bid? The auctioneer looked at Marcus. Marcus's face had gone very pale. Yes. I guess so, the auctioneer said. $1 million going to... Sir, who is bidding? Frank Castellano, Frank said. I'm a private investigator and security consultant, and I'm bidding on David Chen's time because we have a lot to discuss with some of the people in this room. And that's when I stood up, very slowly, very calmly. I stepped back from the table. I looked at Victoria. I looked at Marcus. And I said, in a voice that was quiet enough that most of the room couldn't hear, but quiet enough that they heard anyway. You wanted to know who I am, all of you. You wanted me to be invisible, to be a joke. Now I'm going to make sure you never forget my name. Let me tell you what happened next. Not immediately, not with shouting or drama, with something much worse, with facts. Frank stepped forward and he started talking, not to the auctioneer, to everyone in the room. He pulled up documents on a screen. Actual verifiable documents, emails, design files with timestamps, testimony from architects who'd previously worked with Victoria. It took him 8 minutes. In those 8 minutes, he outlined the entire scheme. Not just the stolen designs, though that was damning enough, but the fraudulent foundation, the misrepresentation of credentials, the intimidation of former colleagues, and, with each document, each revelation, I watched the faces in the room change. The excitement drained away, confusion set in, and then, slowly, anger. Not at the people who'd revealed it, at Victoria and Marcus. "This is insane," Victoria said. She stood up. "These are lies. Character assassination. I'm not going to—" "You can address it in court," Frank said, very pleasantly. "We're filing reports with the IRS, the SEC, and the New York State Attorney General's office tomorrow morning." "The fake design credentials you've been using? Those are fraud. The investors who've given money to the Sterling Foundation based on false representations of your qualifications? That's potentially 20 counts of securities fraud." "My son didn't know about any of this," Victoria said quickly. She looked at Marcus. "Did you? Tell them you didn't know." But Marcus didn't say anything. He was looking at me, and I realized in that moment that he finally understood. Not just that I was something other than what he'd thought, but that I'd known the whole time, that I'd allowed him to humiliate me, that I'd planned for it. "He's your father," Victoria said to Marcus, desperate now. "He did this to you. To us." "No," I said, and I was still calm. I was still quiet. "I did this to you, to both of you." "But Marcus, my son, he did this to himself the moment he decided that money and reputation mattered more than truth." The room was in chaos now. People were recording, taking photos, calling their lawyers. Security was starting to move. The event was collapsing in real time. I walked out, just walked directly toward the exit. Frank followed me. Outside, in the lobby of the Peninsula Hotel, I stopped and breathed. "That was clean," Frank said. "It's not over," I told him. "No," he agreed. "But the hard part is done." The fallout took about 3 weeks. Victoria lawyered up immediately. Her firm closed within a week. No clients wanted to be associated with someone facing multiple fraud investigations. The Sterling Foundation was dissolved. All the projects she'd claimed to be working on were halted, and credit was given to the original architects. Most importantly, the New York State Attorney General opened a formal investigation. Victoria will probably serve time, maybe not a lot of time, given her resources and her lawyers, but some. The minimum punishment for someone who tried to build an empire on lies. Marcus, though, that was more complicated. He cooperated with the investigation. He claimed he didn't fully understand the extent of Victoria's deception, that he'd been led into it, that he was a victim of her manipulation. The lawyers said he'd probably avoid criminal charges, probably just face some civil liabilities, probably come out of this okay if he played it right. But there was something else that happened to him, something worse than criminal charges in some ways. He became invisible. The people he'd been courting, the investors, the celebrities, the other young entrepreneurs who'd been excited to know him, they all disappeared. His LinkedIn connections started dropping. His social media followers evaporated. The startup he worked for put him on indefinite leave pending further evaluation. He went from being a rising star to being a guy nobody wanted to know. He went from being the person in the room to being the person you avoid. 2 weeks after the gala, he called me. "Dad," he said. His voice sounded smaller. "I want to talk." "Okay," I said. "I know you did this. I know you planned all of it. You knew about Victoria. You had that investigator there. You let me humiliate you so that you could have ammunition against me later." "Yes," I said. I didn't see any point in lying. "Why?" He sounded genuinely confused. "Why would you do that? I'm your son." "You're right, you are my son. And that's exactly why I did it. Not to destroy you, to save you. Because in another few months, in another year, the same thing would have happened anyway. Victoria would have been caught. The foundation would have collapsed. But you would have gone down with her, and it would have been your life in pieces, not hers. That's not saving me, he said. That's just revenge. No, I said. Revenge is what I could have done. Revenge would have been letting you go down with her. Letting you learn this lesson in a much worse way, when there's a lot more damage behind you. I don't understand, he said. I know you don't, not yet, but you will. He was quiet for a long time. The engagement's off, he said finally. Victoria left me the day the investigation started, just packed a bag and gone. I don't even know where she is. She's in New York, I said. Living in a hotel in Hell's Kitchen. Her lawyers are negotiating a plea deal. How do you know that? Because I've been watching, I said. The way I've been watching for the past 3 years. The way a father watches when he realizes his son has made a terrible mistake but isn't ready to hear it yet. So what happens now? Marcus asked. And I told him the truth. Now, you decide what you want to be, not what Victoria wanted you to be. Not what impresses people at parties, what you actually want. That's very philosophical, he said, and I heard something like his old voice in there, the boy I'd raised before he'd learned to perform. Welcome to your education, I told him. We talked for another hour. I told him things I should have told him years ago, about money, about power, about the difference between being known and being respected, about the fact that invisibility, properly used, is the greatest power a person can have. He didn't agree with everything I said. He was still young enough to believe that some of what Victoria had told him was true, that there was still value in the things he'd valued, but he listened. For the first time in years, he actually listened to me, like I was a person instead of a walking ATM. I want to make this right, he said toward the end of the call. You will, I told him, but it's going to take time. It's going to take actual work, and it's going to require you to get uncomfortable. I know. Good. Dad? Yeah? I'm sorry. For everything. For how I talked about you, for the auction thing, for all of it. I waited for a moment before I answered. I know you are, and I forgive you. But that's not the important part. What's the important part? The important part is that you forgive yourself, and that you understand why your father had to break your world before you could build a better one. He was quiet for a while. I love you, he said. It sounded like he meant it. I love you too, I said. And I did, I always had. It's been about 4 months since that night. Marcus got a new job. Not fancy, not yet. Entry-level position at an architectural firm. He's actually learning the work instead of just performing it. He comes home to New Jersey some weekends, and we have dinner. Real dinners. Where we talk about things that matter. Victoria's case is still working through the courts. Last I heard, she took a plea deal. She'll serve 14 months, then probation. After that, she'll be someone else's problem. The silver Accord is still in my driveway. I still wake up at 5:47 a.m. I still live in the same 3-bedroom colonial. I still work in real estate, finding value in things other people overlook. But I'm not invisible anymore. Or rather, I am invisible. But now, I understand what that means. There's a concept in business, in power, in life. It's called negative capability. It's the ability to be comfortable in uncertainty, to hold multiple contradictory ideas at the same time, to accept that you don't have all the answers. Most people can't do it. It makes them uncomfortable. But powerful people can. Powerful people understand that sometimes the most important thing you can do is not do something. The most important position to hold is the one where you're not recognized. The most important power is the power that nobody can see. I spent 30 years building that power. Quietly, invisibly, methodically. And my son spent 30 years thinking I was weak because I wasn't loud about it. It's a common mistake. The thing about raising a child is that you don't get to teach them the lessons they need. You can only make the space where those lessons can happen. And sometimes that means letting them disrespect you. Letting them humiliate you. Letting Them think you're nothing. Because that moment, when they realize they were wrong, that's when the real growth happens. That's when they understand that the people worth respecting are rarely the loudest voices in the room. They're the quiet ones, the ones who know things, the ones who've spent 30 years understanding the patterns that other people miss. Marcus will never be the person he thought he was going to be. He'll never be the guy at the party with everyone looking at him, trying to figure out his secret. He'll never be the founder with the mission statement and the validated social media presence. He'll probably never make as much money as he thought he would, but he'll be someone real, someone authentic, someone who understands that the things that matter, integrity, honesty, self-knowledge, they don't show up on a resume. They don't get you invited to the right parties. They don't impress people who are looking to be impressed. They just make you strong. I want to tell you something, because if you've stayed with me this far, you deserve to understand the real lesson of this story. This isn't about revenge. It's not about humiliation or comeuppance or taking someone down to prove that you were right all along. It's about patience. It's about understanding that power doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to. Real power sits quietly in the corner, observing, learning, waiting for the moment when it's needed. If you're watching this and you're someone who's been underestimated, who's been passed over, looked down on, treated as invisible, don't waste your energy trying to prove that people were wrong about you. Let them keep being wrong. Because while they're busy underestimating you, you're building something they can't see. You're learning things they won't notice. You're positioning yourself for success in ways they can't even imagine. The person who's invisible today is the person who becomes indispensable tomorrow. That's not philosophy. That's just how power actually works. And if you're someone who's done what Marcus did, if you've been so caught up in looking impressive that you've missed what was actually important, then I want you to know that it's not too late. The people who love you, the ones who've been there the whole time, waiting for you to notice them, they're still there. And if they're worth keeping, they'll forgive you. But you have to be ready to actually see them first. Not as props in your story, not as stepping stones in your success, as people, as humans with their own knowledge, their own power, their own value. My son is learning that now, and we're both better for it. If this story resonated with you, if you know what it's like to be underestimated, or if you recognize yourself in Marcus, please hit that subscribe button, not just to watch more content, but because I'm going to be dropping a lot more stories like this. Stories about power, stories about what really matters, stories about the invisible people who are actually running the world. And please, hit that like button if you made it this far. If you understand what it means to be patient, to be invisible, to be strong when nobody's watching, leave a comment down below. Tell me, have you ever been underestimated by someone you love? And did they ever figure it out? I read all the comments. Because that's what real power does. It listens, it observes, it learns from other people's stories. The most powerful person in the room is almost never the one talking the loudest. Usually, they're the quiet one, listening, watching, knowing, that's what I want you to be, that's what I became, and that's how I won. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.